Welcome to Quick MCAT Lessons, where I try to explain MCAT topics in 10 minutes or less. So today's video is not a conventional lesson. Today I'll be going over some practice questions regarding the cardiovascular system that I've acquired from various sources. I have about 52 practice questions, and I plan to cover this in 2 videos. I'll give a little bit of time in between the questions to answer. If you need more time, feel free to pause. And if you haven't watched the earlier videos, please be sure to do that, as pretty much all of the questions I talk about will have background in those videos. And if you're lost, you should start there. Starting from the right atrium, what are the 4 chambers through which the blood passes in the heart? And which valve prevents backflow into each chamber? Okay, I hope you've thought about it. So you start with the right atrium, and then you go to the right ventricle. The valve here is the tricuspid valve. Then you go to the lungs from the right ventricle. The valve here is the pulmonary valve. And then from the lungs, you go to the left atrium. And from the left atrium, you go to the left ventricle. The valve here is the mitral or bicuspid valve. And then from the left ventricle, you go to the aorta. And the valve here is the aortic valve. Number 2. Starting with the site of impulse initiation, what are the structures in the conduction system of the heart and the correct sequence of a cardiac impulse? So the structures are the sinoatrial node, the AV node, the bundle of His and Purkinje fibers, and recall you can remember this by stab a big pig. Number 3, compare and contrast arteries, capillaries, and veins in terms of blood direction, wall thickness, and presence of smooth muscle, and valves. So arteries are thick, they have no valves, and they have a lot of smooth muscle. Veins are thin, they have a little bit of smooth muscle, and they have valves. And capillaries are very thin, they do not have smooth muscle, and they do not have valves. Number 4, why does the right side of the heart contain less cardiac muscle than the left side? Because the right side pumps to the lungs and the left side pumps to the whole body. If the right side had as much muscle, then there would be damage to the lungs. Number 5, if all autonomic input to the heart were cut, what would happen? The heart would still beat at the intrinsic rate of the sinoatrial node, but it would not go faster or slower. But it would also not stop beating, it just wouldn't be able to be regulated. Number 6, what are the components of plasma? So plasma is the liquid portion of blood that is mainly water, and it has nutrients, salts, respiratory gases, hormones, and blood proteins. Examples of salts is sodium, potassium, and calcium, and an example of protein is albumin, fibrinogen, and immunoglobulins. Number 7. An individual with B-positive blood is in an accident and needs a transfusion. What types could he receive, and what types could he donate to? Okay, so he is B-positive, so he can receive from positive and negative blood. And so he can receive from B-positive, B-negative, and O-positive and O-negative. And he can only donate to B-positive and AB-positive. If this patient were B negative, then he would be able to receive from B negative and O negative, but then he could donate to B negative and B positive, AB negative, and AB positive. But B negative is a rare type, and less than 2% of the population has it. Number 8, what does hematocrit measure, and what are the units for hematocrit? So hematocrit measures the percentage of red blood cells in a blood sample, and it's measured in percent. Number 9, which types of leukocytes are involved in the specific immune response? And lymphocytes are involved in the specific immune defense. Number 10, where do platelets come from? Platelets are cellular fragments or shards that are given off by megakaryocytes in the bone marrow. Number 11, which cell types in blood contain nuclei and which do not? So leukocytes contain nuclei, but red blood cells and platelets do not. And just recall that platelets are only cell fragments, so they're not actually cells, so no nuclei. Number 12, in bacterial sepsis, many capillary beds open at once. What effect does this have on blood pressure, and why might this be dangerous for the heart? So to answer this, you have to recall the formula for blood pressure and cardiac output. The formula for blood pressure is cardiac output multiplied by resistance, and the formula for cardiac output is stroke volume multiplied by heart rate. And so if your capillary beds open and your resistance decreases, if you want to maintain blood pressure, your cardiac output will have to increase. And if your stroke volume is staying the same and you want to increase your cardiac output, this means your heart rate will have to increase. And your increased heart rate may tire the heart and may lead to a heart attack. Number 13. What is the chemical equation for the bicarbonate buffer system, and what enzyme catalyzes this reaction? So the enzyme that catalyzes the conversion of carbon dioxide to carbonic acid is called carbonic anhydrase, and the equation is carbon dioxide plus water goes into carbonic acid, which can dissociate into bicarbonate and protons, and this is completely reversible. Number 14. Where on the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve would you look to determine the amount of oxygen delivered to tissues? Well, the drop in the Y value can tell this. For example, if the blood is 100% saturated at the lungs and only 80% saturated at the tissues, this means that 20% of the oxygen is released to the tissues. Number 15. What can cause a right shift on this curve, and what can cause a left shift on this curve? So recall the mnemonic, cadet faces right, which means increased carbon dioxide, acid, so lower pH, and increased 2,3 BPG, exercise, and increased temperature can all cause a right shift, and the opposites, lower carbon dioxide, higher pH, less 2,3 BPG, and a decreased temperature can cause a left shift. Number 16. Exposure of which subendothelial compound starts the coagulation cascade, and which protein stabilizes the clot? The coagulation cascade can be started by exposure of collagen and tissue factor, and the clot is stabilized by fibrin. Number 17. Which of the following is a false statement regarding erythrocytes? So A, erythrocytes can contain hemoglobin. B, erythrocytes are anaerobic. C, the nuclei of erythrocytes are located in the middle of the disc. And D, erythrocytes are phagocytized in spleen and liver after a certain period of time. And I hope you found the answer here, which is C, as erythrocytes have no nuclei, so cannot be located anywhere. Number 18, what is the blood pathway starting from the right atrium? So from the right atrium, you go through the tricuspid valve to the right ventricle, you go up the pulmonary valve to the pulmonary arteries, you go to the lungs, back through the pulmonary veins to the left atrium, you go down to the left ventricle through the mitral valve, you go up the aortic valve into the aorta, from there you go arteries, arterioles, capillaries, venules, veins, then you get to your inferior vena cava and your superior vena cava, and you're back in the right atrium. Number 19. The world record for the longest held breath is 22 minutes. If a sample were taken from the individual during the last minute of breath holding, which of the following might be observed? A. Increased hemoglobin affinity for oxygen. B. Decreased partial pressure of carbon dioxide. C. Increased hematocrit. And D. Decreased pH. The answer here is D. Decreased pH, as if holding one's breath for a prolonged period of time would result in a drop of oxygenation, this will lead to an increase in the partial pressure of carbon dioxide. This increased carbon dioxide would go with the bicarbonate buffer system and lead to more protons, which would lead to a decreased pH. Furthermore, the the low oxygen saturation would actually lead to anaerobic metabolism in some tissues. This would cause an increase in lactic acid, and this would also lead to decreased pH. Question 20. What is hemoglobin's affinity for oxygen in exercising muscle tissue? Well, it decreases, and this is explained by the Bohr effect. You can remember cadet faced right, in which E is for exercise, and this causes a right shift causing dissociation of oxygen. Number 21. What is a normal pulse if your cardiac output is 7,500 milliliters per minute and your stroke volume is 50 milliliters? Now, you shouldn't need a calculator for this, and you won't get one on the MCAT, so let me break it down. First, let's start with the equation. The equation is cardiac output is equal to stroke volume multiplied by heart rate. So if we rearrange it to get for heart rate, it will be heart rate is equal to cardiac output divided by stroke volume. So essentially we need to do 7,500 divided by 50. So if you take out a 0, you get 750 divided by 5. And if we just think about it, we know that 750 is between 500 and 1,000. We know 500 is 5 times 100 and 1,000 is 5 times 200. So that means it must be 150 beats per minute. Number 22. An unconscious patient needs an emergency transfusion. Which blood type should she receive if unknown? She should receive O negative. O negative is universally acceptable, not O positive because we don't know if the patient has the D allele. Number 23. Which of the following is true regarding arteries versus veins? A. Arteries are thin-walled, muscular, and elastic, whereas veins are thick-walled and inelastic. B. Arteries always conduct oxygenated blood, whereas veins always carry deoxygenated blood. C. The blood pressure in the aorta is always higher than the pressure in the superior vena cava. And D. Arteries facilitate blood transport by using skeletal muscle contractions, whereas veins make use of the pumping of the heart to push blood. I hope this one was pretty basic, as the answer is C. The blood pressure in the aorta is always higher than the pressure in the superior vena cava. Why was A wrong? A was wrong because arteries are thick-walled, and B was wrong because they don't always carry oxygenated blood. The pulmonary veins and pulmonary arteries are examples of that. And D was wrong because arteries make use of the blood's heart to pump, and veins actually make use of the skeletal muscle contractions. Number 24. At any given time, there is more blood in the venous system than the arterial system. Which of the following features of veins allows for this? A. Relative lack of smooth muscle in the wall. B. Presence of valves. C. Proximity of veins to lymphatic vessels. And D. Thin endothelial lining. So the answer here is A. The relative lack of smooth muscle in the wall. They do have less smooth muscle than arteries, and this allows for stretching. Number 25. Which of the following is involved in the body's primary blood buffering mechanism? A. Fluid intake. B. Absorption of nutrients in the gastrointestinal system. C. Carbon dioxide produced from metabolism. And D. Hormones released by the kidney. And the answer to this one is C. Carbon dioxide produced from metabolism, as this is used in the bicarbonate buffer system.